Hi guys, and welcome to today's live stream. I'm Lieberman, forced to be alone but free to decide how to live it. Today we will talk about one of the most overlooked and misunderstood mechanism in male psychology. Why men shut down under social stress? Well, not just emotionally or spiritually, but neurologically. This stream is based on a landmark study published in Science by 2003 by Eisenberger, Lieberman, and Williams that was titled "Does Rejection Hurt?" An FMRI study of social exclusion. This study transformed the way we understand social pain, showing that social rejection activates the same brain region as physical pain. And for men, that pain often translates into silence and withdrawal. So let's see why. Before I read the key findings of the study, here's what the researchers did very briefly. They use functional MRI to scan people's brain while they played a virtual ball toss game called Cyberball. So, halfway through the game, the other players stopped throwing the ball to the participant. They were excluded, ignored, shout out. What happened in the brain was astonishing. The same neural regions that light up when you experience physical pain, specifically the anterior cingulate cortex and insula, lit up during social exclusion. So let me read an extract from the study that says, social exclusion elicited activation in the anterior cingulate cortex and right ventral prefrontal cortex, regions implicated in the distress component of physical pain. So that sentence alone explains so much about why men go quiet. When a man feels rejected, ignored, or humiliated, his brain doesn't just register embarrassment. It registers pain. The same pain you feel if you were hit or burned. So what this means in simple language? That means that social rejection means it's a pain signal. And pain signal activates a threat response. And threat response leads to withdrawal and shutdown. So when men face social stress, they don't usually reach out, they pull back, right? Not because they don't care, not because they are cold, because their nervous system is literally telling them to protect themselves. It's a reflex rooted in survival, not indifference. So let's connect this to modern men, that it's us nowadays. So now add that neurobiology to the reality of our modern male lives. We have few close friends, no stable community, a culture that punishes vulnerability. So combine those factors and you get a perfect storm. When men feel excluded today, our brains fire the pain alarm, but we have no safe outlet to process it. So men withdraw further, and silence feels safer than exposure. That's why the phrase "talk to someone" often doesn't work for men, because men cannot talk while their brain is screaming danger, danger, danger. So now let's try to go more into detail into how this pattern shows up in each of the C4PC personality groups: the internal rationals, internal emotionals, external rationals, and external emotionals, and how each type can rewire its response to social stress. And by now, if you're finding this episode valuable, helpful, please don't forget to like the live stream if you're listening right now, or the replay if you're watching the replay. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps keep this project alive and to make me decide to go on making more context next month. So now I presented these studies, these famous studies from 2003 called Does Rejection Hurt, which show that social exclusion light up the same brain region that register physical pain. So now let's connect those findings with a newer research and understand why men are specifically vulnerable to social stress, and learn how each C4PC personality type reacts under this invisible neural pressure. So give me 1 minute for a brief scientific context. Maybe it could be a little bit boring, but it is required to move on in the explanation. So let's start with the basics again. So when you face social rejection, that is being ignored, mocked, replaced, or silenced, your brain doesn't treat it as a minor discomfort. It treats it like physical harm. That's why we say it hurts when someone breaks your trust, because neurologically it really does. So Eisenberg's FMRI data showed the anterior cingulate cortex, known as ACC, that is the brain's pain alarm center was lighting up alongside the insula, which processes emotional awareness. Now, let's jump into almost 20 years from that study, 18 years to be exact, to 2021. Another study by Tomova and Sachs in their paper titled The Neuroscience of Unmet Social Needs. It built on Eisenberger's work and showed that after just 10 hours of isolation, the brain's midbrain reward system fires in the same way it would after 10 hours without food. So loneliness creates a craving for connection, just like hunger creates a craving for food. But here's the catch. For many men, that craving is paired with fear. The very act of reaching out feels unsafe. So the male brain responds by withdrawing instead of connecting, despite needing and looking for connection. So why the male brain withdraws? Let's look at what happens inside the male brain under social stress. So under social stress, the threat circuits get activated. That is technically the amygdala and periaqueductal gray treat rejection as danger. It doesn't matter the names, but it's just to mention one time. So what else happens? Also, the prefrontal control drops. So in that moment, you lose the ability to verbalize and reason through emotion. Also, under social stress, the reward system goes silent. So the dopamine pathways that motivate connection decreased activity. And also the cortisol rises. That is that it implies that the The chronic social stress keeps the body in fight or flight mode. So instead of seeking comfort, paradoxically, many men isolate. It's not defiance. It's a physiological strategy to minimize further damage. This pattern has deep evolutionary roots. Historically, male stress response was geared toward fight or avoid danger, not tend and befriend. For our ancestors, silence and distance kept the group safe. Today, that ancient reflex plays out in text messages left unanswered, the ghosting, and relationships that fade without closure. So, let's see what are the modern implications of all this. Now, think about this in today's context. We have work competition as a constant, community structures that have collapsed. Men often have no one they can call when they are struggling. So the same neural pain of exclusion is now chronic. It has become chronic. It doesn't come from a single event. It's a constant background hum. So long-term activation of the ACC and amygdala leads to numbness, to apathy, to irritability. That's why many men say, I don't feel anything anymore. It's no emotional emptiness, it's neural fatigue. So we get into what we can call as a social feedback loop. That falls into a vicious cycle. First, the stress hits, leading to the pain circuits to get activated. Then the man withdraws, causing connection to drop as well. Then the isolation worsens the stress, which causes an increase in the pain again, which generates further withdrawal, which leads to an intensification of the loneliness. So every loop rewires the brain a bit more toward avoidance. That's why breaking the cycle requires conscious intervention, not just good intention. So let's see how each of the C4PC group processes social stress. Let's walk through the 4 macro groups so you can see yourself in one of them and understand your default shutdown pattern. Let's start with the internal rationals. So they escape into analysis. When they are hurt, they intellectualize the pain. They will read about attachment theory instead of calling a friend. Their ACC and insula light up, but the prefrontal cortex try to explain it away. So as a result, they get emotional numbing disguised as objectivity, and they might fall into burnout and existential disconnection as a result. So which is the antidote? Well, mainly a structured self-expression like journaling, therapy that uses logic, like cognitive behavioral therapy, and intellectual discussions that slowly reintroduces emotion. In the case of the internal emotionals, the deep feelers type of men, they feel everything too intensely and therefore withdraw to avoid being overwhelmed. Chronic isolation keeps the amygdala overactive and the reward system under-responsive. So as the result of that, they fall into rumination and self-blame. And if this extends for a while, they can fall into a quiet depression masked by creativity or fantasy. Their antidote to this would be to create safe rituals of connection, one-on-one conversation with the person that you find meaningful in your life, with a spiritual practice, artistic expression that creates real bonding. In the case of the external rationals, who are the achievers, they cope by doing more, doing. When the pain of rejection hits, they bury it under projects, deadlines, and performance. They focus on work mainly. So on brain scans, their stress hormones stay high longer because they never stop the fight or flight loop. So as a result of that, they overwork until they crash. That is the risk. They also are on the risk of burnout and sudden emotional collapse when their control fails. Well, their antidote for this is to have like a scheduled decompression time, a body-based relaxation such as massage, and learning that rest is not weakness but is maintenance for your body and your mind. And finally, the external emotionals, the most expressive ones and intense, they live through connection. So social rejection hits like withdrawal from a drug for them. Is intense. When the ACC fires, they swing between oversharing and disappearing completely. So the result of this is falling into emotional instability and self-doubt. And they always are at risk of falling into dependence on external validation for too long. And their antidote for this would be for them to set consistent boundaries and relationships that value authenticity over performance. So the good news is that the brain is plastic. Maybe you had heard about the term neuroplasticity. Neural pathways that were shaped by pain can be reshaped by connection. So the steps that actually work are, first, micro-connections, to greet a neighbor, join a small group, volunteer. Then second, an embodied presence, to exercise or breathing techniques to reduce cortisol before talking with someone. Then narrative processing. Tell your story, even to a journal, to reactivate the prefrontal cortex. You can send a message to yourself explaining a situation, or previously it was a letter, but nowadays nobody writes letters, even less men, but you can open your own, you can create drafts in your email account and just write it and read it yourself. Then accountability buddies, to get at least one male friend you check in with on a weekly basis. And also purpose. Having direction reduces stress. So having a goal anchors the mind. So these are not motivational tips. They are ways to retrain the same circuits that once associated connection with danger. It's a retraining process. So if you zoom out, this is not only a neuroscience story. It's a whole how do you say civilizational story. Our entire digital culture now is re-engineering male behavior toward detachment. So less touch, less community, less mentorship. So this study by Eisenberger showed that social pain is real pain. The study by Tomova showed that isolation creates craving. Modern society teaches men to ignore both of these. And that's a disaster for mental health. And the solution is not to make men less male, but to make connection less threatening. So let's tie it all together. When a man feels excluded, his brain processes pain. Pain activates defense. Defense creates silence. Silence breeds isolation, leads to isolation. And isolation deepens pain. So breaking this loop requires understanding, not shame, by other members of society. Once a man recognizes that his withdrawal is a reflex, then he can replace reflex with awareness. That is how he claims his agency, his responsibility. So if you've been feeling disconnected lately, not broken, just muted, remember this. Your brain is doing its best to protect you, but protection is not the same as living. Re-engage slowly, one conversation at a time. Every small moment of connection reveals the bridge between pain and purpose. So I hope that this live stream has been helpful. If you thank you so much for spending this time with me. Also, if you're watching the replay in any other moment, please like the live stream and subscribe to the channel to support the creation of more content like this. And much courage, take care, and see you in the next one. Thank you.